He just can't help himself. Joining me now is Michael McFaul, former U.S. ambassador to Russia and MSNBC international affairs analyst. Ambassador, he can't help himself. It's like it's on a repeat dial for him, and it really does beg the question. And it's not so much why Donald Trump trusts Vladimir Putin as much as he does. I mean, that book has kind of written itself. But why should anybody else, and especially Volodymyr Zelensky, who will be in Washington tomorrow?
That's exactly right. Nobody should trust him. They don't trust him, and Mr. Zelensky most certainly doesn't trust him. I can tell you that. And even when we had better relations with Moscow in the Gorbachev-Reagan days, when there was a different kind of leader, not Vladimir Putin, Reagan used to always say, trust but verify. And that's exactly what the Ukrainians want. They're not going to sign a peace deal that is just based on Putin's word. They need much more than that. And that's why he's coming to Washington tomorrow.
You know, Ambassador, it begs a couple. Your point just now begs a couple of points for me because, the peace deal is an essential part, but the president, Trump, has leveled up. Hey, give us half of your your fine diamonds and minerals and other things that may be there under the ground in Ukraine, and they're seemingly moving in that direction. What do you make of that piece being put in the middle of this conversation for Zelensky, who's indicated, okay, yeah, we may look at these mineral rights, giving half the mineral rights to the United States, even though it will take, a long time for that to really be realized?
Well, as an American, I'm embarrassed by it. I mean, we're exploiting a partner who is fighting for their lives in Ukraine, fighting for their country. And in the middle of that, we're exploiting them in this kind of colonial deal. I just find it atrocious, and I don't think it's in America's long-term interest. I think if we keep doing this, eventually we're going to have no friends in the world. Having said that, Zelensky has no choice. He has to sign this. They've done a good deal in negotiating it. I think people will be surprised at how this is going to feel like a pretty kind of public relations document and not very specific when we see the signing tomorrow. But they have to do it, and better than this kind of PR memorandum of understanding, rather than some deep deal that will put them in deficit for a long time.
All right, so you've touched on the meeting for tomorrow between the president and Zelensky, and I thought it was very interesting what the president has had to say about Zelensky, about a week ago, and what he had to say about him today being a dictator. Let's take a quick listen.
Mr. President, do you still think that Mr. Zelensky is a dictator?
Did I say that? I can't believe I said that. Next question.
Think of it, a modestly successful comedian, a dictator without elections. Zelensky better move fast or he's not going to have a country left.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to laugh. Did I say that? I can't believe I said that. Yeah, you said it. How does that frame the conversation tomorrow? I'm sure Zelensky will just kind of brush it off and not make much of it. But what does it say about the nature of this meeting, the agreements that they're looking to sign, and what Zelensky can expect on the other side of this? Because it doesn't, from my perspective, look like it's going to be a good thing, regardless of how or what they sign tomorrow.
Well, first, two things. What that shows me, that clip you just did, that brilliant putting them side by side, is it's the difference about being off on Twitter, being with your buddies and saying stupid things versus sitting next to the Prime Minister of Great Britain. And the more engagement that leaders like that have with the president, the better, as far as I'm concerned. He just was too uncomfortable to say what he said there. That's a good sign. But secondly, I'm with you. I'm not optimistic that I'm grateful that they're having the meeting. They're going to sign the deal. But everything else, the president and his team are just giving away their best negotiating cards before the negotiations have begun. Saying you can't join NATO. We're not going to put soldiers there. You got to give territory. I've negotiated with these guys. These are tough negotiators, the Russian team. And this is not the way you negotiate a lasting peace deal, which begs the question, does President Trump really want to negotiate a peace deal? I'm not so sure he cares about that. I think he cares more about Putin than he does about an actual deal.
Ambassador, you just put your finger on the sweet spot, because I agree 1,000% with you. The deal is just paper. This is paper. It's like, okay, I make Putin happy and move on. This is not about the long-term interests of the United States. In fact, you having lived in Russia and been a part of that ecosystem, the New York Times is talking about Trump's Washington and Moscow becoming very symbiotic in many respects. The United States is not Russia by any means, and any comparison risks going too far. But for those of us who reported there a quarter century ago, Mr. Trump's Washington is bringing back memories of Mr. Putin's Moscow in the early days, from the news media being pressured, lawmakers having been tamed, career officials deemed disloyal and being fired, and on and on and on. It's setting up this parallel universe to a time long, long ago in a Soviet Union that certainly Putin longs for.
Well, I read Peter Baker's piece on that, and I did live in the Russia that during the same time, those early Putin years. And what I'm struck by in the parallels was the business folks, the oligarchs, they all got behind Putin. And you know why? Because he cut their taxes. Does that sound familiar? Mm-hmm. And they all said, oh, he's not going to do these autocratic things. It's not going to go that badly. And then he put one of them in jail 3 years later, and then he shut down his media. And I think everybody should learn that lesson. And that's where Trump aspires to, but we're not there yet. And I think we should do more to stop so that we don't go the path of Putinism, because we know how that ends. It ends in dictatorship and then invading countries. We don't want to go down that.
All right. Well, he does have his sights on Canada and Greenland, so we got to be careful. Ambassador Michael McFaul, thank you so much. Folks, we'll be right